Welcome, geeks, to another exciting episode of Rockin The Code World with dotNetDave. I'm dotNetDave, David McCarter. Sorry, I'm messing up already. It's the first show of the year, and I'm glad you're all here. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you had a great holiday, and I had a great time off. It's been a month since we've done the show. I completed my book, which I'll talk about in a minute. I bought a brand new computer, made it through the holidays, and so I'm here. And the weather's been, the month that the show's been off, the weather's been really crappy here in San Diego, but it looks like it's finally going to start getting back to normal today. So I'm happy about that. It's San Diegans are kind of wimpy when it comes to the weather because it's sunny pretty much all year, and when it does go down into weather other people are experiencing, we start complaining about it after like 3 days. So anyway, welcome. Today's the first guest for 2023. Gosh, I can't believe it's 2023 already. Is Robert Bogue. He's the president of Thor Projects LLC, and we're going to be talking about empathy in software. So I'm really excited about that. Something we all need to think about, and I think it's a great topic to start the year off with. Everybody has New Year's resolutions, and what do they want to do this year, what projects they want to complete, what other things they want to do, and so it's a great thing to roll empathy and into it, and especially after the week we've had in America this past week. I think we all need a little bit more of that. Sorry, I was looking at the comments. So let's get started. So I have a new computer. I'm trying to figure out how to do everything. So guess what? My book is finally out. Woohoo! Rock Your Code, Code and App Performance for Microsoft.NET is finally out. I worked on it for most of last year, and the last like 3 months I was doing benchmark testing almost every single night. And even after my book was released, I decided to do some more. And I've been doing that the last 2 weeks for some extra things I'm going to be coming out with really soon that I know you'll like. So anyway, this book is 266 pages. Here it is right here. And this is the preview copy and my proof copy. And it's 266 pages. And the data that I present in the book is from over 6,500 benchmark tests. That's 3,000 more tests than the second edition of the book. So if you have the second edition, you need this one, especially not only because there's a lot more information in it, but the numbers have really changed between .NET 5 and .NET 7. So you're going to see some of the changes when you look at the graphs, and even unfortunately, I've noticed some slipping in the performance in .NET 7. I'm not super worried about it at this point because .NET 7 is not a long-term support version. And we'll see what happens in November when .NET 8 comes out. So, but get the book. It will really help you speed up the code performance in your book. I'm really proud of this one because I'm already making changes not only in my open source project Spargen, but also at work, I'm making changes based off the data that I've gathered off this book in the last couple of months. So if I'm finding it useful, I hope that you'll find it useful too. So wherever Amazon ships books, you can get it. I have all the links on my website with the different countries of where to buy the book. So I hope you go pick up the book. And like I said, I have something else coming out probably the next week or so. I think you might like too. So, but I'm going to keep that under wraps. Okay. Oh, and speaking of Spargen, I have my new version out, came out in November. It's .NET 6 and .NET 7 compatible. So I hope you go check it out. And like I said, I'm rolling in performance changes into Spargen, because of what I found in my book. especially because, different types seem to act differently in collections. And so I'm working on that for Sparta. So I'll help you go pick it up. Pick it up. And before I forget, Simon and I have picked the date for the 2023 Code Quality Conference, which would be June 2nd. So let me know if you're interested in not only speaking at the conference, but attending. I want to hear your thoughts so we can have an awesome conference this coming June. And this is the biggest one-day conference CSharpCorner does. So I'm really excited to bring it back for the third time this year on June 2nd. So really, really excited about that. Okay, with that, I want to bring on Robert. Robert has led change projects for 3 decades. As a recovering technologist, he changed the way people work as he has changed technology. He's the author of 28 books and has been a Microsoft MVP for 19 years. Wow. His work, sorry, Robert, his work has transformed corporations, governments, quasi-government organizations. It's not about technology, but he leverages his strength in technology and human systems to create change that is sustainable and transformative. Gosh, I can't speak on Saturday. Transformative. Screw it. I've screwed it up too many times. Welcome, Robert.
Hey, sorry. I'm gonna see if I can perfect the tongue twisting aspect of my bio to see how
I read it in my head a couple times before, but I guess I should do it out loud next time.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah. So it's funny. It's in there. I include recovering technologist.
Yeah.
And it's hard because I don't want to let it go. My daughter. This quick story starts. So my daughter is putting up a little mini fence, right? But she's doing it with these 4 different lattice works. And so I'm using a 3D printer to print interjoining pieces and leg pieces and stuff. And the family's like, so I thought you were getting away from that technology thing. I'm like, no, I'm always here to play. I can't get away from it.
Yeah. I feel the exact same way that, I think I'm one of those people that love technology, but also parts of it I don't like. And so,
Yeah.
there's parts of me that just want to, when I win the Mega Millions lottery on Tuesday, all I want to do is buy a cabin in the middle of a lake with no Wi-Fi, no cell phone, no nothing, and just live out there, right? And
I give that about an hour and a half.
Yeah, I know.
Right, because you're going to be like, I wonder where the good pizza
What do I
is.
do?
Right.
I can't watch Netflix.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I have to say that, some of one of the best vacations I ever went on was this rock and roll cruise. It was almost a week long. And not only did I get to see 3 bands play at any one time, and a lot of them were some of my favorite bands of all time. But my girlfriend at the time couldn't use her cell phone for a week, and that was the best part because we could focus on each other, and we talked, and we didn't have that thing going off all the time, right?
That constant distraction.
Yeah. So yeah, I know. Well, the next thing I want to get is a 3D printer. That's next on my list.
And it's fine. And then you do the models that you can buy or get for free, right? And that's a great thing. And then there'll be this point and you'll be like, but I want to make something myself. And then you're going to grab Blender. And then 4 weeks later, you're going to realize that you've just spent a whole bunch of time learning 3D modeling. So I'm giving you the heads up, the warning.
Yeah. I understand. I've already come up with my first project, and that is, I donate blood every 4 weeks, and because I'm a super donor here at the blood bank, and the chair they hook me up, because I have to sit in a chair for 2 hours, while they spin blood out of me and put it back in and all that stuff. And they have these little cup holders that don't fit the armrest. Every time I put a bottle of water on it, I just keep looking at it going, you're going to fall over at some point, right?
Yeah.
I've even taken pictures of the armrests so I can make a cup holder that actually fits on it.
Yeah, offline, I'll send you something which is a product that actually exists. But I'm with you. Like we
Yeah.
have these nits, right? And I think I do that in technology too. Um, so I warned you ahead of time. So tell me, what was the favorite project that you've ever worked on?
Well, there's been a lot of favorite projects, I would say, but I think, the one that always hits my head first was the one that ended up making me a patent inventor. And it wasn't because, and it was for proflowers.com. When I don't know if they exist anymore. They were bought by FTD, and so I don't know what FTD has done to them, but I know they exist still. But so I was part of the original development team at proflowers.com, and so being a patent inventor wasn't really why that was the best part. That was nice, but what really was the best part was, number one, what I invented, allowed the company to go to sell multi-million dollars of products a day, because before that they couldn't do it, right?
Right.
So that kept my job for a while, at least until everything went to crap. But so that was the first thing, is that I really did help the company grow and all that. So that's good. But my favorite part was, so before we installed the first version of it at I went to some of the installs here in California, because at that time, ProFlowers was getting all their flowers, I think, from 4 growers in America. 3 were in California, and 1 was an importer in Florida. So I went to 2 of the growers here in California, and not only did I go there before I even wrote the product, but then I went there when we installed it, and we had a trainer and everything. And a couple days before, I had a couple days to kill. There's always that lull before you actually release, right? So I was sitting there going, I was trying to put my foot, because I did see who was going to use this in the end. I was sitting there going, okay, I need to put myself in in the mindset of somebody who might have never used a computer before in their life,
Yeah.
right? And I go, okay, this might be a little too daunting for them. So what I did was basically everything, the person in charge of printing, the orders would need, I tied to F keys. Remember when we used to use F keys?
Yeah.
And I tied every major function to an F key. So I at one of the installs, I was there, and with my boss, his wife, who was the trainer, and the workers, and we had a somebody who could translate for us, because all the workers only spoke Spanish, right? So as soon as I saw my boss's wife start to show the woman how to use the mouse to print orders, I looked at the woman's face, and I just saw the fear in her face, right?
Yep.
And I didn't tell anybody what I did, right? And so I said, stop, 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 and I told the translator, tell her this. And the translator told her this, and her eyes lit up, right?
Yep.
And that, to me, is when I succeeded,
Yeah.
right? Because I tell people this all the time. I think I did it, Simon, when I was in India, is I write apps for the consumer, right? When I see the consumer's eyes light up, that's my reward, right?
Yep.
It's not the money, it's not the fame, it's not any of that stuff, right? Not that I have fame, but it's not any of that. It's when I can make the end user's life better, that's when I feel rewarded.
Yeah.
And that's when I get personal satisfaction from my career. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. For me, it is a study I did, patients with diabetes, and we helped primary care physicians get to treating patients better, and they had better outcomes.
Yeah.
Right. There's this one measure in diabetes, it's HbA1c, and we moved it down about a full point, which meant lives,
Yeah.
right? It meant
Yeah.
years, it meant lives, it meant it's, and that's, I think, the really powerful stuff that we can do with code is we can actually make people's lives better, right?
We
And
can.
in small ways, making them not
Mhm.
afraid, or in bigger ways, keeping them healthy.
Yeah, that's actually reminds me of, so I told you the product I'm most proud of, right? But
Yeah,
uh, some of the ones I enjoyed working on, even though they were kind of short-lived, were for medical patients, right? And I did
yeah,
work on a diabetes application, and the application I worked on was for the University of Santa Barbara, because this was years ago, when they were still, doing the prototyping and before it went through FDA and all that stuff. But basically, when you see the ads on TV now with those people with the little things on their arms that talks to the phone, which talks to the pump,
yep,
that's what I did.
that's
like
right.
like over 20 years ago when I had diabetes, right?
Yeah,
And I was,
right,
not only was I interested because it helped people, but I had diabetes at the time. I don't anymore, but I did at the time. And so I really enjoyed working on that because the end result was it was going to save lives, right? I
right,
worked on another one for tuberculosis patients through UCSD, and that's where I also taught university, and I like that one too, and because we were helping those patients get over that terrible disease, right?
right.
And so I get a lot of enjoyment out of medical ones, and I'm actually the team I'm on right now. We have a medical platform, so uh, I'm happier on this app.
That's great, right?
Yeah,
Like, I mean, it just shows the power that we have as developers to impact the world, to
yeah.
change the world. Yeah.
That's why I'm super excited, and I know it's the we hear things now, but I think it's going to be an avalanche really really soon. Is just how much AI is going to help uh, people and illnesses and things like that, right? And machine learning and AI, I think that is really where the explosion is going to be,
Yeah,
in
and
my mind at least.
yeah, I mean, I think that is definitely a place where we're gonna see huge growth, right? And it's
Yeah.
probably the same kinds of growth that we saw in relational database in the 1980s
Hmm.
and that kind of time frame. And I think it's um, got its own set of challenges because the hard part about AI is you really can't validate the answers,
Yeah.
right? And so, as you were doing the intro and talking about the book, I was like, "Oh, that's super cool." And you get to, like, you do a run, you get a result. You do a
Hmm.
run, you get a result. If you do that with AI or ML, you do the run, you get a result. You do the same run, you get some other result, and
Also,
you're like,
yeah,
"Whoa, that's not how this is supposed to work."
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I do think there's this huge amount of space where we can get better results. And of course, it's the way that we bring big data to life. People
hmm,
have been talking about big data for a while,
hmm,
and big data is fine as long as you've got something that can go process it and make use of it, make meaning out of it.
yeah, yeah. That's true. Yeah, and So now that I'm getting older, I'm going to be glad that AI might be, helping. Well, even I know this isn't really AI, but even for years now, doctors have had apps that if they prescribe a drug, it'll immediately tell you, well, are they taking these other drugs?
Right,
Or no,
interactions.
I'm sorry, it
Yep,
will look at my record and say,
yep,
wait a minute, he's taking this other drug, maybe you shouldn't prescribe that, or maybe you should do something different, right? And so that's
yeah,
already, I watch my doctor use it on his phone, right?
right, yeah. Drug interaction warnings are powerful. The beauty
Yeah.
is you have two layers of it now. You have it
Mm,
at the pharmacy level
right.
as well as the
Yeah.
at the primary care physician level.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's good stuff. It's all, and again, it's using technology to improve human life,
Yeah.
and that I think is just super cool.
And that's all I've wanted to do in my career. That's all I've
Yeah,
wanted to do is just to make someone else's life better, whether it's at work or their health or something. That's all I've wanted to do as a software engineer.
yeah, yeah. So you know that's great, but what do we do? So have you had the experience? So that study, the one that I was so proud of, the one that I loved, um, it didn't work.
Mhm.
I mean, it worked technically. We solved the problem. We actually saw the outcomes, but then the politics and the company and
Mhm.
and the way that the organizations were working all blew up around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but have you had any projects where you're like, man, like the technology was rock solid,
Mhm.
but the world around it blew up?
Yeah. Yeah. That's happened to me many times. The first one that hit my head when you said that was when I was working at Mitchell International. Mitchell International writes estimating software when your car or boat or motorcycle gets into an accident, or your glass gets cracked or something like that. And so, you know, back in the day, they had those big thick books. You go into an auto repair place and they whip out a book. Well, that's what they used to
Right,
do, right?
right.
Until software came along, and then they went to software. Unfortunately, they still kind of ran it like a book company, right?
Yep,
And I don't think even the CEO understood how software worked, or at least managed the projects, right?
right,
And so I thought we had good software. We had some great products. But like you said, the company around it just kind of imploded, right?
right.
And they made stupid decisions that led to, for example, in my department, they laid off. I was principal software engineer, which is the highest level you could be there at that company, and they laid us all off in one day, right?
Yeah,
I mean, who does that?
right,
That wants to keep their team running, right? You
right,
can't lay off the entire brain trust in one day.
right,
I mean,
right,
that's just silly, right? And
right.
and the company hasn't been doing great since. And so I've been on multiple projects like that where I thought the product was good, or at least had a chance, but as usual, management gets in the way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing that I've seen over my career is you get told the requirements are X,
Yeah.
but they're actually Y, or Y plus Z minus some number that's randomly generated, right? And I think that's one of the things that got me frustrated with technology is
Yeah.
I would build this really cool stuff, and then it wouldn't get used for one reason or another. Like it didn't match because I got wrong requirements, or the company blew up or whatever, right? And that's what got me really interested in this idea of how do we really understand our users,
Right.
you know? And I love your story about, hey, I was watching the eyes and I knew that a mouse to her was something you killed, not
Mhm.
something you moved.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, one of the other reasons that project went really well, we didn't have any issues with it. We didn't like release the software and pull it back. Everything went really, really well, in that project from the time we first released it until the time I left. Um, but the reason I was able to create an application that not one complaint was registered when I was there about the application. I would even ask, the office people at the growers, how do you like it? Oh, it's great. It's awesome. We love it. And I've never heard a negative thing about it. Right. But that's because, before I even sat down and wrote one line of code, right, I went to the biggest grower. My boss and I went to the biggest grower in California. Right. We showed up because they start working at like 5 a.m. or something like that.
Right,
Because by the time the FedEx trucks come, everything has to be done right in
right.
mid-afternoon. So they start at like 5. So we were there at 5, right?
Yep,
And I went directly to the manager and I told him, okay, I want you to show me your process from where the flowers are grown until they get into the truck,
yep,
right? And that's what he did. He took me out to it was the first time and only time I've been to a major production greenhouse, right? And I always remember this, the first thing I walked in there, I go, man, it kind of stinks in here. And he said, yeah, we
yeah,
put sulfur in the air because it keeps the mildew down.
mhm,
It's those kind of things. And so he took me from there to where they package everything, and then when they put it into they have FedEx semi trucks just sitting there. They just throw the stuff into, right? It's not
right.
like FedEx comes, picks it up. They pick up an entire semi
Truck,
truck, right?
yeah,
And even when he took the little receipts from, the printouts and put them in his filing cabinets for, backup or whatever, I saw the whole thing, and not one time did I ask him a question about what he wants.
Right.
Not one, right? Because my job was to understand his workflow and how I can make it better.
Right.
Right.
What do you do?
Right.
How do you do it now? What frustrates you?
Right.
Right.
And I asked all those questions, right? And the mistake I hear people do is they go, so what do you think if we put the, label over here, or, the text box over? Users don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
They don't know software. They don't write software. That's our job. It's our job to understand their job.
Right.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, though, right? Like, if you were to go to college and you were to get a bachelor's degree in computer science, or something like that, right? You are unlikely to have more than 3 credit hours of understanding user requirements.
Mhm.
And in fact, a lot of programs don't even have that, right?
Yeah.
They're like,
Yeah.
hey, here's how you write your C# code, and here's threading and
Yeah.
loops and data structures, and go have at it. And the fundamental thing, though, is if you don't understand what they're doing, how they're working,
Mhm.
how are you going to do anything that's useful?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's again, it's frustration, because we know we need to get it right. When is the time that it's easiest to change code?
Mhm.
Before it's written,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like we're building bridges and we're pouring a lot of concrete, but
Mhm.
anybody who's worked on a big system for a long time knows, that may not be concrete, but changing that's going to be hard, right?
Impossible sometimes, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so how do we get it right the first time? And what I found, because I was not taught either, right? Like, I didn't get anybody to teach me requirements.
No.
I found that there are other places that have strategies for doing the kinds of things that we need to do. And one of them is
Mhm.
anthropology. A guy
Mhm.
by the name of James Spradley wrote a book back in the 1970s, The Ethnographic Interview. So Spradley and his colleagues were anthropologists, and basically you drop an anthropologist in a brand new culture that they don't understand, and they get to figure it out.
Mhm.
And in most cases, they don't even speak the language, right?
Mhm.
And I would say that we probably didn't speak the language of every situation that we walked into. We didn't have the lexicon, the vernacular that they used.
Mhm.
But he's got this really beautiful sort of framework for how do you get to know what their world is like.
Right.
Um,
I've
and
even, after that, no, this was before ProFlowers. So I've even left companies because they wouldn't let me talk to the users.
Yeah.
Right. Because I told them, how do I deliver great software if I can't even spend time with the users? Right.
Right.
Oh, we know better. Every person that told me they know better was wrong.
Right.
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 And and as soon as a company CEO tells me that, which actually happened right up the street, that's why I live here, I start looking for a new job, because I know they're not really interested in delivering great product, and that's what I want. I mean, great product that solves the user's needs, and if they're not into it, then yeah, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Right. Right. Yeah. And it's really hard. I think, there's so Agile, right? Like, so in both the time that you and I've been doing this, Agile grew up, and there are some things about Agile that are really good, like having a
Right.
product owner, right? And a really good product owner can make a huge difference, because they're that person you can bounce ideas off and test. Do I understand this? And a really good product owner will go, you know what? I don't know either. I'm going to go to Susie, and the language they use in lean manufacturing is Gemba, which is Japanese. It translates roughly to real place, right? And they'll go get those answers. But I think the more we separate, the more we put distance between the developers and what problem you're trying to solve, the worse software we get.
Yeah.
Right. And I think,
Yeah.
and we see that everywhere, right? Like
Mhm.
even in framework, we see stuff, and I don't know how often you do it, but I would say probably once a year I'll find something in the framework and go, and excuse me, but what idiot did this?
Well,
What?
people at Microsoft say the same thing sometimes,
Well, right. Like, and I've got some SharePoint, because I've done a lot of SharePoint collaboration communication work. I've got stuff in SharePoint that you would look at and you're like, if that was in a freshman development course in college, you would have failed the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like that's just dumb.
Yeah.
But how do we make sure that we're doing the right things for people?
Mhm.
And so Spradley's works really good. What about those times? Have you had these times when you had to change the behavior, right? So the software was coupled with some behavioral change, some process change, something, because the way that they were doing it was inefficient or difficult.
Mhm.
And you had to change the behavior of the user. And I've tried doing that. And with the right partners, it works great. But with people who aren't willing to listen,
Yeah.
who aren't willing to learn how to motivate people, it's like that. I think that probably has blown up more projects for me than any other cause.
Hmm.
They're trying to change behavior, and the people that are trying to change behavior are just trying to tell them, well, you just got to do it, right?
Yeah.
They're
Or
going
do
to
it
do
the
it, or
same
you
way
need
we've
to.
always done it, right?
Right. Right. We're just going to order them to do it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work. But we keep trying it, right? Because that's
Yeah.
the definition of insanity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, software teams are insane. That's for sure. Because and like even this company I mentioned a little bit ago, Mitchell, I call them insane because they continue to do the same thing over and over again. I think even now, 10 years after I've left the company, over 10 years now, I've left the company, and I still think they do the same thing. Right.
Right.
And, and, and yeah, team. So why do you think that happens? If so, let me ask you a question. So
Yeah.
if all the developers are going, why are we doing this the same way that we know fails? How do you change management's mind about that? Right. Because at Mitchell, I tried. After that first release that didn't go well, I tried to have postmortems so we all could talk about it. And guess who didn't show up? The
Right.
VP of PM,
Right.
right? The two people, him and I think maybe the CTO at the time, the two people that needed to be there didn't even bother to show up.
Right.
Right. And so what do you do with that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think there's a couple of things going on, right? Like, so one is any successful organization became successful based on a pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
And they believe that replicating the pattern of behavior into the infinite future will continue to serve them. What we know about organizations today is the conditions are VUCA, volatile, uncertain. The last one's ambiguous. I just blanked out on it. Anyway, complex, complex and ambiguous. And so using the same strategy over time won't continue to function. We just know that.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, if you challenge what you're doing, you're expected in leadership to know what it is you should be doing. Like, if this isn't right, then what should it be? And when they know they don't have the answers, like, I don't know how to do that. Like, it didn't work. Yeah, I can tell you it didn't work, but I don't know what to do differently, because my product management book or my course or my degree or whatever it is, they didn't give me these answers. And I think as developers, we're used to making it up,
Yeah.
right? Like, we build stuff and we make up solutions where there are no solutions.
Right.
And for us, that's just normal.
Right.
For them, they're like, no. The recipe book does not have a recipe 7.
Right.
It only has 5, and I've tried all 5 of those, and none of them work.
Right.
I do think that there's things that we can do to motivate them, to help them. There's some neat work that was done called motivational interviewing, and this is Miller and Rosnick's work, and it is the technique that is used with addicts. So if you try and think of a behavior that's the hardest to change, someone being addicted to any substance, that would be it, right? But they had really good success as they started to listen to people. And they use this, there's this abbreviation, OARS: open questions, affirming, oh, I totally understand why you would think that would work. Reflecting, I just heard you say this thing, and I think you mean this. And then summarizing at the big picture, I think, right? And those sort of techniques are really helpful at getting people who are afraid that they don't have the answers and they're expected to, or they feel like they may be being attacked. Hey, I had a failure. I don't want to admit that. Our ego, by the way, our ego is super amazing. It has 26 minor defenses and 22 major defenses. It is more fortified than anything else.
I believe it.
Talk to me about your network security. Yeah, your ego is better insulated than that, buddy.
Yeah. And I think ego needs to be out of a lot of our decisions, I think, for the most part. I mean, we all have them, right? But you gotta keep it out of the way sometimes, especially when you're in meetings and things like that, and like you said, ask those kind of questions and keep pushing back. And to be honest, when something happens in a company that I see is going to take the company down a bad road, I do try to make change. I mean, I think most people that listen to me know I probably do that. But when I try to make change, and if some time goes past and I don't see anybody willing to change it, then that's when I start looking for a new job. And that's the unfortunate part with companies, kind of like what you're saying, is what one time I did a Twitter poll, and no, I did a real poll, and I asked people, how often do you change jobs, right? And my poll said every 2 to 5 years, which is basically the exact same time frame that I changed jobs, right? But why do we change jobs, right? One of the biggest fears companies have, and even some companies, like one I worked at last year, don't want to train you because they're afraid once you learn something, you're going to leave. Right. Or once you become better, you're going to leave. There's companies that actually think that way, right?
Yeah, there's an old quote, and I forget who it's attributed to, right? Like, and the statement is, "What if we train them and they leave?"
Yeah.
And the other person responds with, "What if we don't and they stay?"
Exactly.
Right.
And that's why we have so much messed up product software right now, is because of that kind of thinking, right? I'd rather, people leave, than stay at a job like that, right? I mean, I'm just looking at it from my perspective. I don't know anybody else's, but I don't know how you can do that. Well, I couldn't do anything like that, right? And believe me, I've stayed in positions longer than I've wanted to, but I ended up, I don't think I've ever had a software job more than 5 years. Not one.
Yeah. So I run a consulting company for 20, but it's called Thor Projects, right? We do projects for people and then we move on.
Right.
And honestly, it's really confusing to a lot of my clients because we approach it very differently, right? We're not going to sit there and keep taking your money, right? We'll do it for 2 years or whatever. And then we believe very strongly in support, right? So even without a support contract, support for us gets priority because we want our customers to be successful. But one of the things you're talking about really made me think of a book. There's a book published in 1970, Albert Hirschman, and he wrote a book called Exit, Voice, and Loyalty. And it's about, and it's, the subtitle is Responses to Decline in Firms, Organizations, and States. What's super cool about it is he talks about this mitigating factor between when do you use your voice and when will you exit an organization. And what he was finding in consumer products and employees and all this stuff was the loyalty, the degree to which you are loyal to the company mitigates that. And we think of loyalty as loyalty should be infinite, right? Like we really should have as much of it, but that's actually not true. It's not best for us. It's not best for the company. It's not best for the environment. And how do you choose when to voice your concerns and when to leave?
Right.
I don't know if you've been to an open conference, open systems technology,
No.
where you pick your own groups and you're free to leave, right? Like I've been to some of these, and I'll talk in the group and I'll feel like I'm getting railroaded, run over, and they don't want to listen, and I exit. And people are like, and I've had friends who stayed in the group, and they came back to me and they're like, "I'm sorry, why did you leave?" And I'm like, nobody was listening.
Yeah.
There's no point in me being there if
Yeah.
my input isn't valued.
Right.
The person I was talking to happened to be a female who said, "Yeah, I feel that way a lot. It's just I've gotten more used to sticking it out." Well, I'm sorry that's your truth, right?
Yeah.
Like that's not, that shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
And so going back to how you approach your consulting company, because I find that interesting, because, I think, many companies have a bad view of consulting companies because it's just this never ending project, right?
yep,
Because the consulting company just wants to keep sucking money out of you. Once they have you, they want to keep sucking as much as they can out of you, right?
yeah,
And that gives consulting companies a bad name,
yep,
and I even know some banks here that are, converting back to, in-house development because of that, right?
yep.
So since you do approach it differently, what do you say back to somebody who doesn't understand the concept of, I just want to suck money out of you as long as I can?
Most of the time, I'll go back and we'll talk about, we use an agile approach, not like it's specifically formalized against whatever, but we'll say, look, you're going to prioritize things in waves. You're going to tell me what the stuff is that you have to have, and we're going to do that first. And then you're going to tell me the
Right.
next, right? And
Mhm.
you do your MVP, and then you do, and then you do, and you do. And I said, and at some point, you're going to decide the value I'm getting, the things that I'm asking you to do, and the return I'm getting as an organization are no longer going to be in alignment.
Right.
And when they are, we leave,
Mhm.
right? And that's the time, typically we'll say, look, there's probably a couple of weeks of wrap up,
Mhm.
right? Because we need to make sure that we've got all the I's dotted and all the T's crossed and all the documentation. And we make sure that your team is doing every bit of operations, not just most of it. And so we will use that approach. And my clients are really kind of interesting because we've made some impressive changes to the world. I talked about process changes. So one of my clients had a 94% rework rate.
Wow. That's
Obviously, they had a problem. Just so we're clear, obviously they had a problem.
yeah.
Industry averages for that particular industry are in the 30-ish% range,
Yeah.
mainly because of what it is, right?
Yeah.
But we, in a single year cycle, reduced that to about 20%. So we did about a 74% reduction in rework in the space of one annual cycle.
That's a
And it's an
huge
annual business.
savings for them. I mean, how do you know how much money they save because of that? Do you have any idea?
They declined to answer that question for me.
I bet.
Like, they're
'Cause they
like,
don't want people to know.
yeah, they're like, yeah, this is business changing,
Yeah.
because it was huge. Though there's a ton of markup in what they do, the rework and the customer sat is the other issue, right? Because the customers are always disappointed.
Right.
Um, but the funny thing is, and we still support that application today, and we're, I don't know, 7 years now after we implemented that, and we get 4 hours of support a year out of it. I don't force them to sign a contract.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, great. Okay, but I want to deliver value.
Right.
Look, I get up of a morning because I feel like I'm delivering value to people,
Mhm.
and sitting with my butt in a chair somewhere, occupying space, converting oxygen into carbon dioxide, that, like, I don't want that.
No, it's Me neither. I've never been one of those people that can just sit around and do nothing, right? Especially at work, right? Because I feel I'm cheating somebody at that point. But uh, you know, I go to work, at least this career, I go to work because I want to help people. I want to help their workflow, and I want to pay my bills, right? And so there's always that part too. But that's, yeah, it's exactly why I do things like that. I live, I, everybody that knows me knows I love helping people, right? That's
Yeah.
always been my thing. It continues to be my thing, and will always be continue to be my thing, because I have the ability to do that, right? And I
Yeah.
think everybody should do that if they have the ability, right?
Right.
And so yeah, that's what. So what gives you the best satisfaction for a project? I know you run a company now, but when you were actually coding more,
Um,
what gave you the most satisfaction?
yeah.
Maybe
So,
besides working on medical stuff.
yeah. So I'm going to answer kind of two things. One is from a technical, boy, that was cool.
Mm,
Um, we have built something, and some of our customers use it, several of our customers use it, and it's going to get converted into a product. And it is a multi-threaded pluggable pipeline for processing files. Now let me break that down a bit.
mm,
Um, the part that I love the most is I have all this beautiful thread synchronization logic that allows it to be simultaneously processing hundreds of files
which is not
on
easy with IO.
no
I've done work like that. It's really, really difficult.
and it's multiple systems. So right, like, and it's not even like I've got one endpoint, I've got multiple endpoints, and each of the endpoints have to behave right within the contract. And but but it's beautiful because I know that the technology in it is difficult to do,
Hmm.
but when it's working is super cool. So this particular customer uses it to process about 3,000 faxes a day. Please don't, I know fax
I
80s, but
know.
whatever,
Yeah.
right? 3,000 faxes a day get processed through this system, in a pipeline that allows them to be worked within minutes.
Hmm.
And I said pipeline. So they come in as TIFF, they get converted to PDF. We create a task in a SharePoint list that goes and does something. And in other places, we're adding a note into a SQL table that is recording out what the fax did.
Hmm.
And it's beautiful architecture, right? And so I do enjoy that. Um, I
Can I
think
ask you if you wrote
yeah.
it in the cloud?
Um,
Or-
no.
No. So you're not
it
using any of the cloud like queuing and microservices or anything?
No,
Yeah.
um, in part because this particular thing has a high CPU load
Mm,
scenario when it's doing all the
yeah.
OCR work.
Yeah.
And we found for the customer, it wasn't cost effective for them to go to Azure services for it,
Yeah.
because the cost profile was just not right.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll go even further, because I'm old and crusty. I didn't do it with some of the newer thread synchronization concepts that
Mm,
exist within .NET.
mm.
I went back to um, mutexes and a whole bunch of stuff that has worked for decades.
Yeah.
And I did it that way because A, I knew I could do it, and B, I knew I could find people that would know how to do it that way
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
do it reliably.
Yeah.
Um, so that's that. But I'll tell you, and so and take the viewers down a little rabbit hole for a second. Some of the things that I have been the most proud of are things that really do change the world. And we talked about the diabetes work that we've done. Um, we've done some mental health work, which is outside of development for the most part. There's some things that support it. And that stuff I think can be really powerful. I think there's this huge gap in society about talking about mental health,
Mhm.
about people recognizing that it's okay to do work to improve your mental health. Just like,
Mhm.
hey, I only run when chased, but if you exercise, we know
You run
that
faster.
would be healthier. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If I only run when chased and I only run faster than the other guy.
Yeah.
Right. And in fact, I
Yeah.
have this on a t-shirt because my wife knew that this is the way that I roll. But the mental health and what we do in that space, is so bad.
Yeah,
And
it is bad. Really bad.
so we're getting to work on that. And I think, you know that this topic for empathetic conversations and how do you do things is sort of this intersection between how do you get good requirements. And I
Mhm.
back in Pluralsight, back in 2014, I built a course for them on getting good requirements. And the empathetic conversations is somewhat an outgrowth of that, and it's somewhat a outgrowth of our desire to make suicide less likely.
Mhm.
This is the rabbit hole I told you we were going to go into. So in August of 2021, my wife and I lost our son to suicide.
Oh man, I'm
And
sorry.
thanks. Alex didn't show the signs. Terry, my wife Terry, and I had been trained. We were told that we knew what the signs were, and Alex didn't show them. Um, but what we learned is that, hey, if you can understand another human, if you can build some sort of a connection to that other human, that is a protective barrier against suicide, right?
Yeah.
And so now what we're getting to do some really cool things where we're going to take home medication dispensers and software, and we're going to use it to do better pain management for people who have
Mm.
chronic pain.
Mm.
We're going to use it to limit access to medications that have the potential for killing you, right? So I'm going to get to take some of the software work, this cool stuff that we've done, and integrate that into a social challenge for all of society. And again, at the end of the day, what's really cool is people living,
Yeah.
right? And we had that with the diabetes stuff, but I love the idea that we're going to have people living. I love the idea that the software that we write, the stuff that we do, is going to help people not be in pain,
Yeah.
right? And it maybe it's psychological pain, it may be psychache, or it could literally be because we're better managing their pain that they're not in pain anymore. That's the cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And it in America, we still view mental health as such a taboo
Yep.
experience, right? And not only that, but even our medical professionals don't know much about it, right?
Right.
And so if you do go into the ER, hospital, something, and you're having some kind of crisis like that, they don't know how to deal with you, right?
Right.
And so yeah, America needs to get over that freaking taboo so we can start working on it, because unless that happens, it's going to be a very long time before it gets better, unfortunately.
Well, what I can do is I can tell you that the research extends that taboo across the globe.
Yeah. I'm sure
Mental
it's
health.
worse in other countries. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's at least as bad. I
Yeah,
don't
at
know that
least it's
that's a good thing,
bad. But yeah, you're totally right. Mental health is as important, if not more important, than physical health, if you ask me, right? And they go together, right? One feeds the other, right? If one is out of whack, it's going to affect the other, right?
right.
And yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that happened to you. I feel so bad. I never thought I was going to tear up in a show before, but uh yeah. So let's use software to make this better,
Yeah.
right? Not only
Right.
medical, but mental health too, which is medical, if you ask
Right.
me. And
So
we
let me
can
pause here.
use our powers of zeros and ones to make things better, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me pause here for a second and say, if anybody that's listening is considering suicide, if they're worried about it, if they think, hey, I'm thinking about it, if there's any of that, what I'm going to ask you to do, open a new tab, type in the word suicide, Google. The very first result that you're going to get from Google is going to be a suicide helpline.
Yeah.
And that works in any country in the world, most countries in the world. In the United States, if you're feeling that way, you can pick up the phone, you can dial 988. I say pick up the phone like we still have hand devices. Dial 988 on your phone, and someone will be there and they'll just talk to you.
Yeah.
Because I think one of the other things that we miss sometimes is that it's our brothers and sisters who are software developers who are struggling. And so there's always help, you know, and I'm not hard to find. Like if you're not in a crisis, if you just want something, like send me a note, I will reply to the email.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's awesome. That's it's a great thing that you just put out there. Your phone's going to start, your email's going to start ringing off the hook now, maybe. Let's hope not, right? Let's hope not.
No, so if they need it, I hope so.
Yeah,
and if they don't need it, great.
Right. Yeah. I think we all, no matter what, I don't know. I just think as humans, we need to take care of each other. I don't care what career you're in or what color you are or what, how much money you make. I could care less about any of that stuff. We're all humans. We're all part of the same tribe, right? And we need to take care of each other.
Right.
Yeah.
There's an old Sting song, Russians, right? And it says, I'm not going to get the quote perfect, but it's irrespective of ideology, we share the same biology, right? All of us on the planet who are humans are almost identical from a genetic point of view, right?
Yeah.
So I want to just help people, but and it's clear you do too.
Oh yes, very much so. So I gotta let you go because Simon's going to get upset at me. I'm surprised he's not going 2 minutes, Dave. So I do want to at least leave this interview off a little on a good note. Well, it's all been good, but so what do you do for fun?
I solve problems.
Yeah.
Right. I started us with this set of things that I'm doing for my daughter on printing these pieces with a 3D printer. That's fun to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
some people are like, oh, you're working. I'm like, no, it's cool.
Yeah. That's why I want one.
I get to make stuff and things.
Yeah. I've been doing that since I've been a tiny kid. Right.
Yeah.
To me, it's just an extension of being a kid,
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm so glad you came on the show. I thought that was a great way to start off the year, and this has been a great discussion. And you're always welcome back. Come back anytime you want. I'm more than happy. I think we need to talk about this more. I want to start doing more shows like this. My friend Mark made a comment on the show, so thank you, Mark. I appreciate that, and I want to talk more about this because this is, this is an important part of not only developing software, but taking care of yourself, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If your listeners are thinking about a part of mental health or listening to others, empathy, suicide, any of that stuff, if they want more information, they should send you a note, put a comment in.
Yeah.
And then you and I can use that to drive a second conversation, a follow-up.
Yes, exactly. So if anybody has anything that you want us to talk about with Robert, please email me. I'll give you the email address at the end. And we'll come up with a new show. And maybe if I get enough questions, I can do even a panel show about this. I've done a couple panel shows. They're tough to pull off, but I think they're great advice because it's not just two people, it's multiple, people talking about the same subject. So I'm more than happy to have you back on the show. Thanks so much for spending part of your Saturday with us. And I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. If you want to stick around afterwards, we can chat afterwards too.
Yeah, I'll stick around for the after show.
Okay, the after show. That's the fun part, right, Simon? Simon and I sometimes talk like a freaking hour after my show sometimes. But I like Simon, so it's a pleasure talking to him. All right, well, thank you, and I'll see you next time. So that was a that was a great interview and discussion. I think Robert had some really great things to talk about. I'm not used to being asked so many questions on my show, but I like it because it brings out stuff that I think we all need to think about and talk about, and especially when it comes to our jobs and like Robert was saying, to our mental health too. So all right. So I have a new Twitter poll out. Because of my new code performance book is out, I'm going to be doing a lot of Twitter polls about performance to see if you know the best way to do things. And so here's one about Link. I hope you go to participate. And I think it ends in Wednesday or Thursday. So I hope you go there. Just go to my handle and you'll see it on my account. And please vote which one of those two link statements you think is faster. One is dramatic. I'll give you a tip. One is dramatically faster than the other one. That's the only tip I'm going to give you. So get to guessing. Oh, I found this today. My friend and guest on the show, Richard Campbell, posted this today. Design. You see the design there with the sidewalk? This is where the designer wanted you to go. And you see the grass path on the right? That's where people want to go. So this was a completely failed design. And the reason I wanted to show this on the show is this is exactly what why am I having a brain? Alan Cooper said at a conference back in the 90s that I was at, that I will always remember his statement. And this was the statement. He said that, maybe in a previous life before he did software, they were doing, I think they were putting in, they built a company, right? And of course, what surrounds a company, grass and sidewalks and things like that. Well, they didn't put any sidewalks in when they opened the company, right? They wanted people to walk on the grass to show where they wanted to walk. And then they came back and put in the sidewalks, right? So this was definitely a case where there's some design failures. And so this is exactly what we're talking about today on the show. Talk to your users, understand your users, and understand they're going to go to the right if you put an impediment in their way. All right. Sadly, I have to still talk about the Ukraine. Things are not getting better there, unfortunately. So please, send your thoughts and prayers and any support you can to our friends in Ukraine so we get over this terrible, terrible thing that's happening to them right now. I know we have a lot to complain about, but at least our country is not being blown up for no apparent reason. So please, because like I say over and over again, I want to go back to the Ukraine. I spoke there in 2015. I loved it. I've always wanted to go back. So let's get this over so I can go back. I'm being selfish now. Also, as usual, help me help the kids from India, the Voice of Slum. You all know I visited in October when I was in India. Here's some fresh pictures from there. She got up and told us what she wants to do in her life. And she told us, I think she sang us a song, if I can remember. It's my best time at the conference was actually going to visit the Voice of Slum. So please help me help them. There's lots of ways. You can go to their site. You can go to the GoFundMe page. And there's more information on my website too. So please help the kids in India. Help me help the kids in India because they all need our help. Okay, so I don't have a guest for the next show. So who should I invite on the show? I need your advice. And so email me, not text me, tweet at me, whatever. Who do you want me to invite on the show? I will invite anybody. I'm sure some people won't come. Like, if you ask me Bill Gates, there's no way he's going to come on the show, but I'll ask anybody. So please give me your suggestions, even if they're past guests on the show. I need some suggestions because this is your show. It's not my show. I enjoy doing it because it helps you and it helps me, see my friends. But this is really your show. So let me know who you want me to invite on the show. As usual, please listen to your medical professionals about COVID and all the other things going around right now in America. We're being hit, with a triple pandemic, and I'm sure that's happening in other countries too. So please listen to your medical professionals, so we don't have to put masks on again. And also, a way you can help is please donate blood at your local blood bank. Right now, San Diego's in a really bad shortage. So if you live in San Diego, Mark, go donate blood today. Anybody that donates blood today, the first person that proves it to me, I'll send them a copy of my new book. How about that? All right. And as usual, please email me suggestions, who you want me to be on the show, invite on the show, anything else, at Rockin The Code World at CSharpCorner.com. And with that, I'll see you next time.